Pakistan's army chief held talks with Iran's foreign minister in Tehran on Wednesday as mediators race to bridge key divisions before the ceasefire expires, even as the White House denied requesting a formal extension. The U.S. military has released a video warning ships to comply with its naval blockade of Iran or face force, as Treasury Secretary Bessent announced the U.S. will not renew oil sanctions waivers for Iran or Russia. Marking the 12th anniversary of the Sewol ferry disaster, President Lee Jae-myung, during a top staff meeting on Thursday, pledged to ensure that profit and government negligence never again cost Korean lives. The White House is pushing back on reports that it requested a ceasefire extension with Iran, as Pakistan's army chief arrived in Tehran to mediate talks aimed at bridging key divisions before the truce expires on April 21st. Chung Hye-rim has the details.
In a press briefing on Wednesday, the White House said reports that the U.S. formally requested a ceasefire extension with Iran are not true.
Yes, so I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. We've remained very much engaged in these negotiations, in these talks, that these conversations are productive and ongoing.
She added that while discussions about a second round of talks are ongoing, no decisions have been finalized. She did indicate if there is a second round of talks, those would likely be held in Pakistan, which she described as the, quote, only mediator in this negotiation. According to Iranian state media, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held a preliminary meeting with Pakistan's Army Chief Azim Munir in Tehran on Wednesday. It reports more extensive talks are scheduled for Thursday to discuss the latest communications with the United States. Despite Vice President J.D. Vance and Iranian officials both noting that significant differences remain, President Trump said in a recent Fox News interview that the conflict is, quote, very close to over. Meanwhile, in Washington, a Democratic-backed resolution aimed at limiting the president's military authority in the conflict failed to advance in the Senate. The measure failed to 52 to 47, the fourth time such an initiative has failed to pass since the conflict began. Chung Hye-rim, Arirang News.
As diplomatic talks appear to move forward, Washington is simultaneously ramping up pressure at sea and tightening its economic grip on Tehran by not renewing key oil sanctions waivers. Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. Central Command has released a video warning that it may use force against vessels that do not comply with the maritime blockade of Iran. The clip, posted on X on Wednesday, calls the blockade a lawful action and urges ships entering or leaving Iranian ports to turn back. It warns that attempts to breach the blockade could be met with force, adding that the U.S. Navy is prepared to enforce the operation. The message also says vessels may face boarding inspections and possible seizure, and advises crews to change course and prepare for boarding. Central Command says U.S. naval ships are patrolling the Gulf of Oman. U.S. President Donald Trump also shared the video on Truth Social without comment. Separately, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. will not renew sanctions waivers that had allowed limited purchases of Iranian and Russian oil. The waivers, introduced to ease global supply pressures, are now set to expire, signaling a shift toward tighter economic pressure.
We will not be renewing the general license on Russian oil, and we will not be renewing the general license on Iranian oil.
Meanwhile, a Malta-flagged tanker has transited west through the Strait of Hormuz, heading to Iraq, the first westward passage of a ship heading to Iraq since the blockade began. The vessel is expected to arrive in Basra after anchoring in the Gulf of Oman for nearly 2 days before making the crossing. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea has secured additional oil supplies to ease a Middle East-driven energy crunch following a four-nation trip by Chief of Staff Kang Eun-sik as President Lee's special envoy. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
A week-long diplomatic push by South Korea has secured additional energy supplies. That's according to Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Won-sik on Wednesday, who returned from his trip to Kazakhstan, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar the day before as President Lee Jae-myung's special envoy for strategic economic cooperation.
We have secured 273 million barrels of crude oil until the end of this year, and up to 2.1 million tons of naphtha.
According to Kang, the crude oil volume is equivalent to more than 3 months of domestic consumption based on last year's figures, while the naphtha supply covers roughly 1 month of imports. Most of the crude oil, around 250 million barrels, will come from Saudi Arabia, South Korea's top oil supplier. An additional 18 million barrels will be sourced from Kazakhstan and 5 million from Oman. This comes on top of the 24 million barrels already committed by the UAE last month. For naphtha, 1.6 million tons will be supplied by Oman, with another 500,000 tons from Saudi Arabia. All these shipments are set to be delivered through routes that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. Kang also explained his unplanned stop in Qatar, which was added to the itinerary last minute. The move came after Doha declared force majeure on parts of its long-term LNG contracts, including those with South Korea, following damage to its facilities from Iranian missile attacks.
We made the trip hoping the Strait of Hormuz might reopen following the ceasefire and to at least secure firm LNG supply commitments. Qatar's emir assured us that those commitments would be honored as a top priority, noting South Korea had gone the extra mile to visit in person and strengthen bilateral ties.
This does not include the 1.13 million tons currently affected by force majeure, but refers to the remaining volume under South Korea's annual 6.1 million LNG contract with Qatar. Now, even with additional supplies secured, Kang reiterates the need to maintain emergency measures, such as fuel price caps and export controls, as uncertainties in the Middle East remains high. 송유진, Arirang News.
The Middle East war has exposed South Korea's dependence on petroleum-based products, but the supply shock is benefiting the eco-friendly sector. Kim Jun-ong has the story.
Under heat and pressure, this eco-friendly alternative made from starch and other plant-based materials is shaped into plastic bags. As naphtha supplies from the Middle East come under strain and prices soar, biodegradable bags are now gaining unprecedented attention. In fact, this company has tripled its sales compared to last year since the war began.
About 40% of our products are made from plant-based materials, so our reliance on petroleum is lower. That makes supply more stable and price increases more limited than naphtha-based materials.
Once avoided due to high costs, this company's biomass content now costs about half as much as HDPE, the key material in conventional plastic bags. At this restaurant in Seoul, takeout orders come in reusable stainless steel containers. Rising single-use packaging costs are making reusable options an increasingly attractive alternative for many small business owners.
Single-use container prices have more than doubled, and supply has been unstable due to shortages. On the other hand, reusable containers are relatively more affordable and easier to source, so we've increased our use.
Consumers are also responding positively due to the ease of use. After finishing the meal, customers simply scan the QR code on the bag, then enter their address, and the delivery service picks up the container. Collected containers are cleaned at a central facility and sent back to restaurants. Inquiries are also pouring into this reusable container service provider.
Inquiries have roughly doubled since the outbreak of the war, and we get at least 5 inquiries every day. Reusable containers were once seen as costly, but that has now reversed, with many businesses reaching out to cut costs.
The war has sped up a move away from plastic, but with higher costs and added effort, sustainability remains a challenge.
Our continued reliance on cheap plastic reflects the lack of a proper system to produce high-quality recycled materials. This should be an opportunity to implement measures such as mandatory use of recycled materials and to establish a long-term regulatory roadmap.
What began as a crisis is now forcing a reconsideration of our dependence on petroleum-based plastics and opening new opportunities in the eco-friendly sector. Kim Junong, Arirang News.
Marking the 12th anniversary of the Sewol ferry disaster, President Lee Jae-myung offered his condolences to the victims and their families. Speaking at a weekly meeting with his aides on Thursday, he pledged to do his utmost to ensure that people's lives are never again put at risk as a result of financial interests. More than 300 people, most of them high school students, died after the passenger ferry capsized off South Korea's southwestern coast on April 16, 2014. Investigations have confirmed that the key causes included overloading and structural modifications to accommodate more passengers. The chief of the world's nuclear watchdog is in Korea to discuss the country's plans to build nuclear-powered submarines, stressing that proper procedures must be taken. Oh Soo-young reports.
Korea is moving to work with the International Atomic Energy Agency to build nuclear-powered submarines. This came on Wednesday as Foreign Minister Cho Hyun met with IAEA Director Rafael Grossi in Seoul. According to the Foreign Ministry, Cho reaffirmed that Seoul will fully comply with its obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty in the process of introducing conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines, and emphasized its commitment to transparent communication with the IAEA. Grossi expressed his expectations for Seoul to continue to uphold all non-proliferation obligations, pledging the IAEA's close cooperation. Seoul has long explored the move to develop nuclear-powered submarines, but has faced legal and diplomatic constraints tied to its civil nuclear agreement with the United States, as well as concerns of nuclear proliferation. The issue gained momentum after US President Donald Trump publicly approved the project last year, along with Seoul's push for civilian uranium enrichment and spent fuel reprocessing. Amid concerns over a possible nuclear arms race being triggered, Grossi in a press conference said special procedures and coordination are needed, as nuclear material used in submarines can fall outside normal inspection coverage.
So this is why once the formal process is started, we will have to have important conversations with the different levels of the government, the military, the naval the shipyards, shipbuilders, everyone who is going to be involved in this process to have ironclad guarantee that this activity is not conducive to nuclear proliferation.
As Washington calls on its allies to strengthen their own defense capabilities, Seoul has been aiming to enhance its capacity, especially as Pyongyang's nuclear program continues to threaten regional security. Grossi cited a sharp uptick in activities in North Korea's nuclear facilities.
As we have informed, we have seen, of course, the construction of a new facility similar to the enrichment hall that we were already seeing at Yongbyon. In terms of the production increase, it is not easy to calculate without being there, but we consider looking at the external features of the facility that there will be a significant increase in the enrichment capacity in DPRK.
Going forward, Grossi said his agency will work closely with Seoul as it contributes to global peace and development through the peaceful use of nuclear energy.
Seoul has long committed to the principles of nuclear non-proliferation and the peaceful use of nuclear energy, as well as contributing to bolstering the global non-proliferation regime. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
US President Donald Trump says he is prepared to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell if Powell does not step down in time. In an interview with Fox Business on Wednesday, Trump said he had held back from dismissing Powell to avoid controversy, but ultimately insisted that he will be fired. Powell's term as Fed chair is set to expire in May, though his position on the Board of Governors runs through 2028. He has indicated he could serve as interim Fed chair if a successor is not confirmed in time, a temporary arrangement the Federal Reserve has used in the past when the leadership role was vacant. Foreign arrivals to hit Korea hit an all-time high of 4.76 million in the first quarter of 2026, fueled by the global popularity of K-culture. According to the Culture Ministry on Thursday, the figure marks a 23% increase compared to the same period last year. Chinese tourists accounted for the largest share with 1.45 million visitors, followed by Japan, while arrivals from Taiwan surged by 37.7%, marking the highest growth rate among major markets. The cruise tourism sector also showed a clear recovery, with the number of cruise ships entering ports such as Jeju, Busan and Incheon rising by 52.9% year-on-year. Arirang TV's special program K-pop The Next Chapter won the PPP Best Program Award in the Culture and Arts category at the 2026 Korea Cable TV Awards held on Wednesday. Inspired by the animation hit K-pop Demon Hunters, the award-winning talk show explored the immense global influence of K-pop. The program garnered significant attention for featuring a special appearance by President Lee Jae-myung. The president sat down with the animation's director Maggie Kang, alongside artists including Twice members Jeongyeon and Jihyo, and pop music critics for an in-depth discussion on the future direction of Korea's pop culture and strategic moves within the global content industry. The program was praised for elevating K-pop from a simple musical trend into a comprehensive cultural and artistic value system. It also showcased Arirang TV's unique global reach by actively engaging K-pop fans worldwide.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday that Israel is simultaneously striking Hezbollah and negotiating peace with Lebanon. He said both tracks are happening because Israel is operating from a position of strength. Netanyahu said Israeli forces are on the verge of capturing Bint Jbeil, which he called Hezbollah's capital in southern Lebanon, and that Israel will not stop until Hezbollah is fully dismantled. On Iran, Netanyahu said Israel and the United States remain completely aligned on three goals: removing enriched nuclear material from Iran, eliminating its enrichment capabilities entirely, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. In Turkey, a second school shooting in 2 days has left 9 victims dead. A 14-year-old student walked into a middle school in Kahramanmaraş province in southeastern Turkey on Wednesday and opened fire on classrooms of 10 and 11-year-old children, killing 8 students and 1 teacher. 13 others were wounded, 6 of them critically, and the shooter also shot himself dead. Turkey's interior minister ruled out terrorism, calling it a personal attack. Authorities believe the 5 weapons and 7 magazines belonged to the shooter's father, a former police officer who was detained on Wednesday. U.S. First Lady Melania Trump walked into Capitol Hill on Wednesday to personally push Congress to pass the most significant update to America's foster care system in over 25 years. Melania called the legislation a, quote, moral imperative. She met directly with members of the House Ways and Means Committee and heard from young people struggling with housing, education, and basic survival after aging out of the foster system. Britain's national broadcaster, the BBC, announced plans on Wednesday to cut up to 2,000 jobs. The biggest layoffs in more than a decade come as the BBC looks to slash £500 million from its annual budget amid financial pressures. The BBC is in the middle of a leadership transition, with former Google executive Matt Britton to take the reins next month following the resignation of the former Director General over a misleading edit of U.S. President Donald Trump's January 6th speech. Trump is suing the organization for $10 billion in a defamation lawsuit over the incident. 주지현, Arirang News.
It may still be mid-April on the calendar, but it's feeling more like early summer in many parts. And it looks to be as warm as yesterday in western regions today, but the East Coast remains much cooler under easterly winds, with highs staying in the mid to upper teens. Meanwhile, the air is getting drier, with dry weather alerts being issued in some of the inland regions, and that's including here in the capital. And with strong sunshine overhead, extra care is needed outdoors. And this afternoon, Seoul and Chuncheon will be getting up to 27 degrees, Daejeon at 28 degrees, but Busan will be topping out at 19 degrees Celsius under mostly sunny skies with clean air quality nationwide. Then rain arrives tomorrow across the southern regions in Jeju Island. Jeju could see over 100 millimeters of heavy rainfall, with showers lasting into Saturday. That showers will bring brief relief to the early summer heat tomorrow, but summer heat returns this weekend.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.